Good afternoon, friends. It's a pleasure to be here at the ACJ, and I thank my friend Sashi for inviting me, and in fact, thank him also for organizing this wonderful colloquium. I've been here since morning and listened to some of the finest discussions on the issue of Palestine so far. It's a pleasure, in fact, to be here and discuss this. In fact, I have been studying this issue for quite some time, for maybe at least 20 years now. And I have always been wondering whether it is just geopolitics which dictates the world's attitude towards Palestine, or is there something else to it? So when I delved in deeper, I realized that there are a lot of factors beyond geopolitics that define the Palestine issue. And the foremost among the other factors that define the Palestine issue is theology. So it's basically a mix of theology and geopolitics which makes it theopolitics. And of course, add to that colonialism, imperialism, racism, and also capitalism, as just Lena mentioned in her talk. So it's a deadly mix of so many factors that actually have resulted in the brutal subjugation of the Palestinians. To get a perspective on what's going on, I like to first narrate, which obviously everybody know already by reading the newspapers, what's going on in Palestine from October 7. So it's an emotionalizing, basically, an emotionalizing war on, like Sashi said, children, basically, because 70% of those killed have been women and children. And that's really, hard to even imagine. And when these Palestinians are being killed, the terms that are being used, basically we have exhausted our adjectives. We have used words like savagery, brutal, barbarism, brutalities. We have kind of exhausted. But still, the Western media and other countries, even other media in general, refuse to use these terms. So when Palestinians are killed, they just die. When the Hamas kills Israelis, they are slaughtered. So this differentiation in terminologies, and the words used, also is another tragedy which plays out, which is being played out in Gaza today. If you look at what the South Africa's case at the ICJ, they have presented so devastating facts so far, and some of the facts which I want to talk about post October 7 is, one of the facts that has come out now is, since October 7, Israelis have used 6,000 bombs per week on the Gazans. 6,000 per week. And this does not include the bunker buster 2,000 precision guided bombs, 2,000 pound. 2,000 pound in terms of kilograms works out to 907 kgs, I worked out. So almost 1,000 kilo bomb, bunker buster bomb. 200 of these have been used, not on Hamas, but in territories designated as safe zones by the Israelis themselves. So they force people to go to the safe zones and kill them there by dropping these bunker buster bombs. Most of these bombs have been made in USA and Western nations, and the planes that fly them to bomb are all made in the USA. So, and then this is what is happening from October 7. And for Israelis, the war began on October 7, as if nothing was happening before October 7. So there's a pre-October 7 heaven in Gaza, or a haven of peace that Gaza was for them. And then post-October 7, the horrific attack of Hamas, they talk about. And of course, the attack certainly was horrific. Like Professor mentioned in the morning, Islam does not allow killing of innocent civilians. There is a verse in the Quran which says that the killing of even one innocent person is equivalent to killing the entire humanity. That's in the chapter 5 of the Quran. So, and the Prophet himself was very strict about the rules of war, which during the Prophet's time, most of the rules were, most of the wars were defensive wars, which he fought. The Prophet did not fight a single offensive war during his lifetime. Islam became an imperialistic force much later, centuries after his death. But during the Prophet's time, Islam was not an imperialistic force. It was basically a reform movement, and all the wars that the Prophet fought were basically defensive wars. Even in those wars, the rules were, something like the Geneva Conventions of today. You can't cut trees, you can't kill non-combatants, you can't attack women and old men. And in fact, the refugees, the prisoners of wars had their full rights, and they were never tortured, they were never killed. And in fact, one of the statements of the Prophet, or one of his acts was, when in a certain defensive war, some prisoners were taken, he released them without taking any ransom, on the condition that they educate each prisoner educates at least 10 children. So that was the prophetic example. And if Hamas violates this prophetic example, takes prisoners, women, 80-year-old women as prisoners of war and hostages, or kills babies, or takes them as hostage, certainly that has to be condemned. We shouldn't mince words there. But there are a lot of Muslim friends of mine too who have condemned me for condemning Hamas for taking women and children hostage. See, this is different from Hamas being a resistant movement. But then it can't do what Islam doesn't allow it to do, especially if it claims to do all these things in the name of a religion which stood nothing for nothing but peace. So therefore, having said this, I would like to go and read something from an interesting report which was published by a Norwegian doctor in 2014. Before I begin my talk on theopolitics, I'd like to tell you what has been going on in Gaza. Let me just go through that. I will just read this for you to give you an idea. What the Palestinians, at least the Gazans, have been facing. This is from a report titled Brief Report to UNRWA, the Gaza Health Sector as of June 2014. This was submitted by Dr. Mats Gilbert, MD, PhD. He's a professor at the University Hospital of North Norway, Tromsø, Norway. And he sums up what the Gazans have been facing. Just to give you an idea, this is in 2014. He writes, and I quote, Gazans are deeply suffering with an unemployment rate of 38.5% as of the last quarter of 2013, which is an increase of over 10% points compared to 6 months earlier. And at least 57% of Gaza households are food insecure, and about 80% are now aid recipients. And then he goes on to say, 90% of the water in Gaza has been deemed unfit for human consumption. More than 1/3 of households in Gaza are supplied with running water for only 6 to 8 hours a day, and every 4 days, not on all days. This was in 2013 or 14. All this report is from that year. Palestinian health facilities are overstretched. Service is frequently interrupted by power cuts and insufficient supplies of drugs and disposables. This further threatens the health of population, which is already at an increasing risk. And then the physical trauma. Many children, including children, suffer from long terms of physical effects of war trauma, many with concomitant anxiety, distress, and depression. And then he goes on to talk about the hospital which was bombed and searched, and after that Al-Shifa hospital. He talks about that in 2014. What was its condition in 2014? Just look at this, listen to this. The largest hospital, Al-Shifa, stopped all planned surgery from June 17, 2014 due to the crisis, and further escalated this measure to only perform life-saving emergency surgery from 1st July in 2014. Supplies and stocks of essential drugs, IV fluids, disposables, spare parts, lab chemicals, and instruments can no longer sustain the medical and operational needs of the Shifa hospital. And then there's an energy crisis, and apart from that, the salaries of 50% of the staff has never been paid for last 8 months, he writes. That was in 2014, all before October 7. And then he writes, more than 30% of households in Gaza are supplied with running water for 6 to 8 hours, which I have already said. And the Palestinian children, he writes, are suffering immensely. The large proportion affected by the man-made malnourishment regime caused by the Israel's imposed blockade. So, if all these atrocities have been heaped on the Palestinians from long before October 7, and then now add to that today, where at least 23,000 Palestinians have been not killed, but massacred, incinerated, burnt, blown to pieces, slaughtered, and crushed under the rubble. These are the words that we should be using, not just the word killed. So add to these things, and then you must ask the question, what makes the Palestinians, what makes them do this? What makes the Israelis do this to the Palestinians? Is it geopolitics alone? Because we know all this is being sustained by the $3.8 billion aid that Israel receives a year from the USA. This is not to mention what it receives from other Western European nations. So what I would like to ask here is this. This certainly cannot be geopolitics alone. There's a lot of theology, and not just theology, but a racist theology is involved in this. To begin with, the Israelis believe that Palestine belongs to them. It is not that Palestine, like what Professor mentioned in the morning session, they don't believe in a two-state solution. They believe in a one-state solution, which is an entire state of Israel. They call it the land of Canaan in the Bible, or the land of Israel, which belongs to the Jews, because the Palestinians never had the right to be there. Why? This is where the Bible comes in. They quote from the Bible, the first book of the Bible. And just to give you an idea, because I may be entering into some difficult terrain here, because for most of you, you may not be well aware about what the Bible is and what the biblical verses that are being quoted. It's a complicated territory, and of course I will be very happy to answer your questions during the questions Q&A. So I propose to finish my talk I've been given 45 minutes, so I'll speak for half an hour, and then the next 15 minutes will be for Q&A, where I'll be happy to clarify if you have any doubts. But it will be a little bit complicated. I would ask you to bear with me for a few minutes on this, because this is something which not been touched in the Indian media so far. So I just thought it would be good if I introduce this subject at the ACJ here. See, a lot of people think less like the Quran or the Gita, the Bible is a book. But actually, not many know that the Bible is a library of books. Actually, the Bible is not one book. The Bible comprises of several books. Then you have the Hebrew Bible, which only the Jews believe in. It has 24 books. Then you have the Old Testament, which the Christians believe in. It has 40 books, 40 plus books. And then you have the New Testament, 27 books. If you add all these books, the Christian Bible alone comprises of the Old Testament plus the New Testament. And, 66 books for the Protestants and 73 for the Catholics. So all these books put together, the Old Testament few books, the New Testament, another few books. If you add all these books to put together, you get the Bible. So Bible is not one book. It's a collection of books, basically a small library of books. Not many know that. And in this library of books, the Hebrew Bible has the first 5 books called the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch is called the first 5 books, which the biblical, the believers in this Bible say that was written by Prophet Moses. And they quote from the first book of this Pentateuch, which is called the Genesis. So the Genesis has a verse in it which states that God promised Prophet Abraham, the patriarch of all the Semitic people, including the Muslims, the Arabs, and the Jews, the land of Canaan for an everlasting. There's chapter 17, verse 8. There says that God told Abraham, "I shall give unto thee and thy seed after thee the entire land of Canaan for an everlasting possession." And this verse was quoted by Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, in 2019 during a Security Council discussion. He quoted this verse, brought the Hebrew Bible with him, read the verse in Hebrew, translated that verse into English, and then took the Bible aloft and waved it to the people and said, "This is our title deed to our land." So basically, their right to Palestine stems from this biblical verse, which has been promised. And just to give you an idea of, because in the morning session, Professor, what's his name? From JNU, forgot his, Kumaraswamy. Yeah, he's told it all depends on where you begin. So if you look at this time period, you will have to go a long time back, because we know in 2024, we are 2,000 years away from Jesus. And Prophet Moses was 1,500 to 1,600 years before Jesus. And Prophet Abraham lived another 500 years before Prophet Moses. So if you add this entire period, it goes beyond 4,000 years. So this promise that the Jews, the Israel, not the Jews basically, but the Zionist Jews who the Israelis claim to be the title deed, is at least 4,000 years old, according to biblical scholars. And it's not a question of time, how far we go back into history, or whether we begin in 1917 or 2023, October 7. No, it's all about the legitimacy of the claim and the legality based on justice and the truth. Is there any truth in this claim? Because I'm not here to question the belief of the biblical followers of the Bible or the Christians. It's not about that. Because biblical scholars themselves say that these verses which are there, they're basically not history. Obviously, we know 4,000 years ago, there couldn't have been history in that sense. It's not history. Basically, they are legends. I have recently written 4 articles on these topics in the Indian media so far since October 7. So in this, I have quoted all these scholars to say that biblical scholars themselves say that these verses which the Israelis quote are not history, but even from a religious point of view, they are not the words of God, because they're basically legends written centuries after the time of the people in whose name they are being proclaimed. For instance, this promise given to Prophet Abraham by God has not been written by Prophet Abraham himself. It was supposedly written by Prophet Moses, who came 600 years after him. And then the biblical scholars tell you that this promise, again, was not written by Moses himself. The book of Genesis, they do not know who the author is. It's supposed to be written by Prophet Moses, but they're not sure about the author, because that particular chapter on Genesis contains Moses' own obituary, where it says Moses died and so on, so here. But how can an author write about his own death? So for these reasons and other reasons, they say that the book of Genesis or the first 5 books of Bible could not have been authored by Prophet Moses. So they came much later. They were used, these legends were created much later to create a claim over the land. And once again, if you go back and read each word of this claim, for instance, the particular verse says, in which God is supposed to be telling Prophet Abraham that I shall give unto thee and thy seed after thee. If you stop here and say, who are the seeds of Prophet Abraham? Prophet Abraham had 2 sons, according to the Bible itself. The first son was Ismail. The second son was Isaac. And through Isaac, Jews come. And through Ismail, the Arabs come. But when Bible says, even if for the moment, if you take it for granted that this verse is for hypothetical reasons, that this verse is correct, you will have to divide the land between the Arabs and the Jews, because both the Jews and the Arabs are the seeds of Abraham. Because the Bible says, I will give unto you and your seed after you. But then the biblical scholars, not the scholars, but the followers of the Bible, the partisan followers of the Bible, who believe in these verses, or rather who created this legend, say that, no, we don't reckon the seed of Abraham through Ismail. But why? Was he not his son? Yes, he was his son, but then he was not born to a normal woman. He was born to a slave woman. Abraham had 2 wives. One was Hajira and Sarah, or Sarah and Hagar in the Bible. So Sarah was the first wife, but since she didn't have any child, she asked Abraham to marry another woman. He marries Hagar. But she's an Egyptian. So for them, the Egyptian are black people, kind of colored, not white in the sense of racism. And see, once again, I'd like to clarify, introduce a caveat here. I'm not saying the Bible is racist. The Bible is certainly not racist. It is what is being attributed to the Bible which is racist, but not the Bible. Bible doesn't say this, because God, a compassionate God, cannot be racist. He cannot choose between his own creation. And to say that colored people are inferior and people who are white are superior, or people of any other. How much do I have? So basically, this is what it is. I think I'll take another 5 minutes to finish. So basically, it is this racist aspect of interpretation of the Bible, which has made the Arabs condemned people. It is not because they are not children of Abraham. They are children of Abraham, of course. But since according to them they were born to a slave woman, they don't count. Even today, if you look at the present Jewish people, most of them are Ashkenazi Jews, the white European Jews who have been settled after the Balfour Declaration was made. And the Balfour Declaration itself clearly says that, the declaration was made in consultation with the World Zionist Congress to give back the Jews their own land, which they owned, because the people who are making these documents, the declarations, were all Christians who believed in this ancestry of or the originality of the Jews in Palestine. So these people were actually bringing the Jews back to Palestine, and they considered it their religious duty to do that. That is why today you find people who are backing the Israelis today are the Christian Zionists who firmly believe, that if the Jews, rather for them it's the Jews, in the form of Israelis, because not all Jews are like that. We will have to differentiate between the Zionist Jews and the normal Jews, because we have thousands of Jews protesting against the brutalities of Israel today in America, in USA, in UK, Australia, and many parts of Europe. So all these people are also Jews. So we cannot talk about all Jews in the same breath. So we have to differentiate between the Zionist Israelis who control Israel. The establishment of Israel is controlled by the Zionist Israelis, fully backed by the Zionist Christians in Europe and mostly in America. So these people firmly believe, they have their own agenda. They believe that according to the biblical belief, before the second coming of Christ, the Israelis will have to fully occupy the land of Palestine. And if you do not occupy the land of Palestine, then the second coming of Christ would be delayed. And if it is delayed, then the Christians won't be, because the Christ will come in the second coming, and the Jews would then be converted to Christianity. So they have an agenda that the sooner the Christ comes, the sooner Jews would become Christians. But the Israelis don't believe in this kind of this theology. For them, it suits Christian Zionists believing in this and helping them occupy Palestine. So they don't believe in the second coming of Christ. So, in this mutual scheming, the people who are caught in this mutual scheming are the Palestinians, who have completely lost their territory today, and and on the verge of being wiped out, because the latest estimates, according to WHO and the UN, state that 70% of Palestinians are suffering starvation and disease. 23,000 people may have been massacred by now. But then the reality is the 2.3 million people may also, a large number of these people may also die due to disease and starvation, exposure to the weather, the cold weather. So we are looking at brutal genocide of not just 23,000 people, but actually 1 million people at least. Even if 50% of them die 6 months later, that also is a cause of, this is the reason for that. It's not that they may not have been bombed, but they are going to die because of these things. So the only way to stop this, and the other thing is, Israelis are very clear about it. The Israeli government, if you recall, when Prime Minister Netanyahu waved a map just 15 days before October 7 attack at the UN. The map included the entire Palestine, including Gaza and including Gaza and the West Bank. So we are talking about river to the sea here, by which River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. But if you look at the Bible, the biblical verse, it talks about river to the river actually. This is the territory which originally these Zionists would be claiming. The Bible talks about the boundaries of this land of Canaan, which have been promised to Abraham and his seed. And these boundaries start from the river Euphrates to river Nile in Egypt. If you look at the portion between those two rivers, river Euphrates, as you know, runs through Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. And Nile is in Egypt. Look at the territory between these two rivers, which is supposed to be the land of Canaan promised to Abraham and his seed. So now we do not know. In the future, they may claim the entire region. So this is what we are looking at. And certainly I agree that, this cannot be allowed to happen. And the only solution, in my opinion, is a two-state solution. I know it's difficult. My friend Stanley may not agree with me here, but I feel that perhaps this is the only way. It might seem difficult, but that does not appear to be any other way out of this. There does not appear to be any other way out of this. And I firmly believe this is possible because of a couplet which was told to me by a friend of mine who is no more. He was a great poet from UP, and he quoted this verse to me once. To how difficult, I mean, even difficult things can happen. He said that चोट की एहसास पर है इन्हिसार, टूटता शीशा भी है, पत्थर भी है. Meaning, it all depends upon the blow that you deliver. Because just as glass breaks, stone breaks too. So I think we have to go for a two-stage solution. And I think maybe I have not covered a lot of portions. Perhaps, the time, even if you give a couple of hours for this, is not sufficient. I know that. But perhaps I can explore and in the Q&A sessions now for 15 minutes. And anybody who wants to be in touch with me after that through email or anything, I'll be very happy to answer the questions and clarify on this subject. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll sit. Yeah. I can answer from here, sir. No problem.
All right. Right. We will now take some questions. We shall only keep it to 2 minutes, 2 questions only. So please raise your hands, those of you who have questions.
So in 2 minutes, can I make a comment?
Yes,
please come. So since everybody is talking about one-state solution, two-state solution, and I'm not an advocate of one-state solution or two-state solution. My point of view is that if it is a two-state solution, Palestine should be an independent sovereign country, like any other independent sovereign country. If it is a one-state solution, currently the whole of historical Palestine is ruled by Israel. So you let everybody who is living in the region vote, participate in the election process, and treat them equally as equal citizens. So either two-state solution or one-state solution, could it be a just solution? That's it. Yes.
Right, we can still have 2 more questions. Yeah, but like, the next session starts in 5 minutes. It's online.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Roshan Zaheen and I'm a student of ACJ. So sir, in terms of the status of women, which is still ambiguous, as we know that the aftermath of the war is mostly consequential in the lives of women and children. So if you talk about the two-state solution, the approach of two-state, could it be safely assumed that there will be a change in the status of women for the better? Because like you mentioned that nowhere in Quran is mentioned that any innocent being can be killed. Similarly, Islam has also ensured gender equality. So your thoughts on that, please, sir. Like, do you feel there will be change in the status of women for the better if there is a two-state solution approach?
See, first of all, we do not even know if there's going to be a two-state solution. So let alone talk about, is the mic on or something? Yeah. See, certainly, of course, but since this talk is not about, the status of women in Islam, which I would, because I have been writing on it too, in my articles. But of course, yes, the status of women has to improve, not just in Palestine after a two-state solution, but everywhere. Right here in India. Why go to Palestine? In every part of the world. It is because the first sufferers are women in every conflict. If you look at the world wars or any conflict, the worst affected are the women and children always. And like Sashi said, and even the UN is talking about it now, that this has been a war on children. Yes, I completely agree that the status of women has to improve. Unfortunately, that's not happening in any part of the world, especially in the Muslim world. For instance, even in India, especially in India, if you can briefly touch on this, for instance, this is a talk on Palestine, but I hear even the hijab issue is a big issue here. But then if there's another conference on that, we can talk on it. But because I don't want to digress from the topic, so I would like the question to be related to the Palestine issue today. Thank you. The second question, and I'll stay. Yeah, anybody who? Yeah.
The land of Canaan was supposed to have been given to the seeds of Abraham by the God, right? But the Arabs are also supposed to be indirect seeds of Abraham
Direct
coming
seeds.
through. Direct seeds through Ishmael.
Yeah.
Okay, doesn't that make them joint owners of the land of Canaan? And why should they be denied a space in that?
They be denied?
Why should they be denied their rightful space in the land of Canaan?
Exactly. See, the Palestine has been in the control of the Arabs right from 638. I think that date was mentioned today by the professor from JNU. It was in 638 that the second caliph of Islam took control of Jerusalem and Palestine. And since then, till the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in 1918 in the First World War, it has been in the control of Muslim Arabs. So only for a brief period of about 100 years, it was in the control of the Crusaders. So we are not going back into the history and trying to find a solution to it now. What we have to see now is, at the time of the Balfour Declaration, who was occupying the land? Who did it belong to? It didn't belong to the Jews or the Israelis, because at the time of the Balfour Declaration, there were 92% of the people in Palestine were Arabs who owned almost the entire land of Arab. And what came after Balfour Declaration was a British mandate in 1922. It was there till 1948. Supposed to end in 1947. It was extended by another year. And what was the purpose of the British mandate? When the Balfour Declaration was issued in 1917, Turkey was the Ottoman Empire was not yet defeated. It was in 1918 that it got defeated. So they had no jurisdiction over Palestine to divide it, to give that land to some other people. And then they introduced the British mandate after that. And the British mandate, the main purpose was to facilitate the immigration of Jews into Palestine. And then at the time of that mandate itself, when Jews were brought in from other parts of the world, mostly from Europe, they didn't even exceed 2/3 of 1/3. So at the time of the mandate too, only 1/3 of the population was Jewish, and the rest of the 2/3, more than 2/3 were Arab. And the land was 80%, 90% owned by Arabs once again. And then came the UN Resolution 181-2 of November 1947. And even then, the UN had no jurisdiction to partition any other country. For instance, in India, the partition of India happened, whether right or wrong, because we agreed to that. We agreed to partition. The Indian leaders agreed to the partition. It was not done by the UN. But in the case of Palestine, it was the UN which partitioned Palestine into two. And the 57% of it was given to the Israelis, Zionist Israelis, and 43% to the Arabs. Now this is what they were contesting. Now we don't question the existence of Israel, because the Palestinians themselves have accepted their existence of Israel. So we don't question it. So they have a right to exist. But what they are now demanding is, at least give that 43% which was allocated to us in the UN Resolution number 181-2. They're not. Even that 43% has almost been fully occupied and on the verge of being completely taken over through this war now, because the attacks are happening even in West Bank. So what the Palestinians are basically demanding is this: give back at least the 43% allocated to us in 1947. If that happens, that would be a two-state solution. That's what we need to push for. Thank you so much.